Are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm ready to fire away.
All right. Some interesting stuff in rapid fire today. First, though, you besmirched Navy last week, saying that Navy wasn't any good. Some people calling you out on this. Do you care to recant your take on the Navy midshipman football program?
What did I can you? I wish we could do a playback.
You said something along the lines of Navy wasn't any good, like you lumped them into the category of not good programs. That's the gist of
I
what
mean,
I
there's a lot of
remember.
tradition there, but they're not like they don't play consistently good football. They're good every, they have a one-off every what, like 10 years, 15
Well,
years?
and here's the point I made in response to one of them. Look, Navy was undefeated when they played Notre Dame last year. They were
And
ranked
got
in the top
shellacked.
25, and Notre Dame beat them 51-14.
You can't tell me that's good football.
Right. Good is a relative term. Like they're good for Navy. Against the schedule that they played, okay, they were okay. If you would have put them in any of the Power 4 conferences, they would be lucky to beat 500, right?
They would be lucky to make a bowl game.
Yes, and especially like when you look at the like you're going to see an even greater trend of like the talent. Like when Notre Dame and Navy play, the talent is trending so far in Notre Dame's favor. I think you're going to see more results like that. I don't think we're going to see close Notre Dame Navy games for a while. So like, okay, yeah, like based on what Navy has been in recent years, Navy was better. They were quote unquote, I'm using my air quotes, good, but it's still a relative term because you put them up against an actual, like people were legitimately talking about, does Navy have a chance to make the college football playoff? No, because look what happened when they played one good team on their schedule, like one really good team on their schedule, Notre Dame, 51-14. So that's why it's like, okay. Joe, unfortunately, no, I don't think they will. But
there's too much history.
I have no idea what Navy and Army and Air, like the service academies, are doing.
They
like
don't need money. They're here to serve their country.
Yeah. I mean, Blake Horvath could obviously go out and get himself an NIL deal. But the other side of that is those guys are getting paid as it is. Like they're the only, they were like, even like before NIL and all this stuff started, the service academy guys and gals were the only college student athletes who were already getting paid to be there and go to school. They get a monthly stipend because of the fact that they're bound for the military. So, all right, more stuff. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bevacqua being invited along with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey to golf with President Trump to discuss the future of college sports, says blank about Notre Dame.
To me, it says that Notre Dame is always going to be a football pioneer, a college football pioneer, because we saw this with Jack Swarbrick and his ability to get, Notre Dame at the table, but also have a prominent voice. And now there's this conversation about Pete and the SEC commissioner meeting with the president to talk about the future of college football. And so I guess when you think about powerful people in college football, you take the commissioner of the most powerful football league the last 20 to 30 years. And then when you include Notre Dame and Pete Bevacqua, I think that shows how powerful Notre Dame is at the end of the day, even though people want to tell you why they're not relevant, why they need to be in a conference, why they don't have a seat at the table, why their input doesn't matter. If that were the case, then Pete wouldn't be joining that trip. He obviously has influence and has a voice. And so that is what Notre Dame has done so well, is they're setting themselves up for the future, but they also have a voice in very important college football decisions going forward.
Exactly. Look, when you have the ear of the president of the United States, it means something. When you have a personal audience with the president, it means something. The president talked to two people, and he golfed with two specific people, the commissioner of the SEC and the athletic director of the University of Notre Dame. I saw Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports. He was the first to report this over the weekend, this little summit. And in the article that he had, he called Bevacqua and Sankey two of the most influential leaders in college sports. And I think that says something because you're talking about the commissioner of what is regarded as at least the most powerful conference in college sports, and the athletic director. One oversees several schools. The athletic director of Notre Dame, oversees one school, but they were essentially on the same footing, just like when Pete Bevacqua and Jack Swarbrick before him were in those meetings with the college football playoff. Their vote counts the same as commissioners of an entire conference. What were they talking about? Nobody really knows yet, but there's a lot of speculation. Bevacqua and Sankey, want help from the federal government and that kind of thing because of some of the stuff that we were talking about in the first segment, because of all this stuff, like antitrust and all this legislation and different things like that. So look, Pete Bevacqua he's got more than a seat at the table, like holding his own one-on-one, in a situation like that.
Don't you think the rest of the college football, maybe world commissioners are glad that someone else is there besides the SEC commissioner? Because the last thing that you probably want is just a one-on-one between the president and the conference that everyone hates the most.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's like Pete kind of there too to be like,
that would have been
balances a little bit, like, we, the rest of us, don't necessarily agree with what Mr. Sankey is saying here.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that Trump and Sankey have, had, whatever, like talked before, but like the thing with, Trump obviously with the golf and all that different stuff goes way back with Bevacqua. Like it's like 11 years or something like that when Bevacqua was working in the PGA. So, that connection has been there for a long time, but you're absolutely right. If it would have just been Sankey and the president, I think that you would have irked a lot of people. But the fact that Bevacqua was in on that as well, at least provides a little bit of balance, I think, for everybody else, perspective-wise.
Who do you think won?
That's a good question. That's the report we need.
Who
won this little threesome? I know.
And I need to know what was on the line potentially. Was there any incentives there? Winner gets this, winner gets that, loser does this.
I haven't heard like any insight into Bevacqua's actual golf game.
I would have to imagine he's pretty good.
He's working for the PGA. He's got to have some chops.
Oh, right? he's been around the PGA. He obviously probably has the money to financially play, year-round golf, really good gear, so yeah. My money would have been on Pete, but
So if we're going start bench cut just in golf,
I'm starting Pete, and then that's where I'm leaving it.
Okay, we can leave the other two to figure themselves
out. Because I don't know enough about Sankey.
I know, exactly. All right, let's talk some actual football for the first time today. Woo-hoo. Xavier Watts led Notre Dame with 6 interceptions last season. Do you buy or sell any two Irish players combining to have more than that this season?
I buy this. And there's 2 names that come to mind. Leonard Moore is number 1 on that list. He's a preseason All-American. He's the most talented or the best, returning underclassman corner. He's one of the best returning corners in general. He has great size, great length. I'd like to see him a little bit faster. But his arms are just going to be able to get in the way, get in some throwing alleys. And the reason why, or the next person I'm going to say is Adon Shuler. And the reason why I say Adon is I just think he's a guy who's got a nose for the football. Like you hear coaches talk about guys who are just naturally always seem to be around the football. Like that's who I think Adon Shuler is going to be this season, whether he's filling the alley on some tough run feeds or he's playing over top in the safety position. I just see him as a guy who's always around the football. He's kind of like the road runner out on the field, just always kind of there. And so you combine, I think, Leonard Moore's lankiness at the cornerback position, and then you have Adon Shuler at the second level. Maybe that's the easy answer because they're both returning guys.
Yeah.
But I just think that there's a lot of talent there, and I do believe that Adon Shuler's best football is still ahead of him. And I think that, being able to get a little bit more solid in coverage is going to be very beneficial for him this year.
Yeah. And I mean, legit question. And I was thinking the same thing as you were saying that about Leonard Moore. Will they throw it more? Well, if they don't throw it more, they've got to throw it somebody, and that leaves Christian Gray, who had 3 interceptions himself last season, as it was. And I think if they're not throwing Leonard Moore's way, I think that Christian Gray is easily going to end up in the probably. I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up with 6 by himself. Like if they're throwing, his way that often. I would say 3 is a minimum, probably. I could see him duplicating the 3 that he had last year. And then Adon Shuler would be my next one as well. Like between those 2 corners and Adon Shuler, I think that you're going to have at least, it will add up to at least 6, if not even more than that this season.
I agree. Who do you think is going to lead the team in interceptions?
Joe says Christian Gray has a chip on his shoulder. I think it's going to end up being Shuler. I think that he's going to kind of step into the Watts role. And I realize, there are people like, well, he's not necessarily just going to, like Watts helped him out quite a bit. And that's true. But like what's going to be next to him? And we haven't even talked about Jalen Stroman, for that matter, so coming in from Virginia Tech.
That was a trick question, by the way.
Okay.
I wanted to see if you'd fall for my trap, but
did I fall into it or did I like sidestep?
We weren't in the same thought process. I think it is largely determined around if Notre Dame plays as much man as they did last season. I think the reason why you saw Watts succeed so much is he kind of just gets to be the cleanup guy. When you're playing so much man like that, he gets to go for the tip balls. He gets to, maybe a quarterback's trying to fit a ball into a tight window in man coverage and he overthrows or throws behind. We saw many Xavier Watts interceptions just kind of being, around the ball, but not necessarily being the primary defender on the wide receiver. And so I think if you play a lot of man, then Shuler makes more sense. But then if you get into maybe some more of the zone stuff, I think that's when you could start to see the ball spread out. But I'm also going to go with Adon Shuler.
Okay.
But again, I think it's kind of still up in the air. I mean, we know they're going to play man, but what's that kind of pie going to look like this year? Because that they're trying to get at least away from it a little bit.
All right, let's play our favorite game. It's Let's Guess the Season Over-Under Win Total. We haven't done the Texas Longhorns yet, so today we are doing Texas. We're going to see if we can guess what the Vegas over-under win total is for the Longhorns. I've got the schedule here. I'm going to pull it up. We'll go through it.
I have it too.
Okay. Start off at Ohio State.
Nice. So I think the best way to look at these is what I've come to is it's either a maybe or you feel that they're definitely going to win, because a maybe is what will give you, if you're starting at 12, because that's how many games you play in terms of, the over under. If you get a maybe, then I think you subtract one, and then that's kind of where you end up,
That makes sense. I like that. It's a good system. So Ohio State, maybe.
That's a maybe. Yep.
San Jose State,
that's a win.
UTEP,
that's a win.
That's a win. Sam Houston,
that's a win.
That's a win. At Florida,
it's a win. I think Florida will be better, but Texas is just so far ahead of where Florida's at the ground, ground up. Texas is dang near at the ceiling already.
Agree.
Florida might get them. There's talent. It's at home, but I have to go Texas right now.
Then October 11th, Red River, they play Oklahoma.
So what's interesting about this one is when you feel like you have a grasp on the Red River rivalry is usually when you see an upset, when Oklahoma shouldn't win, that's when they win. Or when Texas shouldn't win, that's when Texas wins. So
true.
I just think Texas is, and I think Oklahoma is going to be better, but I just think Texas is further along. So as much as I want to say maybe, I have to stick with Texas on this one.
I think it's a win as well. A lot of people are going in on Oklahoma already. I don't think there's any real reason to go in on Oklahoma yet. I'd like to see them actually. Let's see who their schedule. We can maybe do them later this week. They've got Michigan, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, LSU. Not an easy schedule by any stretch. We'll have to do them later in the week. I'm calling it a win for Texas right now. At Kentucky, it's a win. Mississippi State,
Win.
W. How about Vanderbilt? Are we going to go? Are we buying in? Back-to-back years?
If I'm not buying Oklahoma, I'm not buying Vanderbilt. So give me Texas.
I buy that. Okay. At Georgia, that's a maybe.
Maybe.
Arkansas,
that's a win for Texas.
Texas A&M to end the regular season.
That's a maybe for me. I think Texas A&M is going to be better than they were last year. And it's at the end of the season. Both teams playing their best football. In-state rivalry. That's a maybe for me.
Okay. I would concur with that. So we've got 3 maybes. So it's either 9.5 or 10.5.
And since it's Texas and Arch Manning, as I think it should be 9.5. But I think
first-time starter.
I think FanDuel is going to pull one over and give you 10.5 and really try to play to those. And I think I'll even do you a little bit better. I think it's going to be 10.5, and I think it's like minus 105.
Ooh, okay. You're giving odds too. Okay. I agree. I think it's going to be 10.5. So we're both in on 10.5 as the win total for Texas.
I just think that's the overinflated ego of Texas. It realistically should be 9.5, but because it's Texas, it's going to be at 10.5. And it's going to be right around minus 100, minus 105 odds.
Okay. I'll say minus 114. Here we go. Texas regular season wins. 9.5.
Ooh, we should have stuck to our guns.
We talked ourselves out of
What is it, like minus 140, though? Minus
176.
Oh, that's why.
Yep.
We're on the – they could put that at 10.5 and probably go at minus 100 if they wanted to.
Absolutely.
Because that's what that's saying, like.
Yeah, that's a sucker bet is what
exactly.
that is.
That's a huge sucker bet.
Yes.
We were right, though. We did the maybe game, and we talked ourselves out of it.
I know. I think that's a good system. I like that. We'll have to do that from now on. All right. Tommy wants to know if they're favored to win the SEC. Let me see if they've got that here. Conference winners.
Who's winning the Independent Bowl?
Where's the SEC? There they are. Texas is the favorite, plus 300.
Ooh.
Georgia's plus 310. Alabama plus 480. LSU plus 750. Ole Miss plus 1,200.
They have. How does LSU have better odds? Ole Miss has at least been playing good football the last 2 or 3 years.
No kidding. Okay, so you didn't get to do any start bench cut with us last week. I came up with another one for you today. 3 current college football coaches. Who you starting? Who you benching? Who you cutting? We got Mike Norvell, Lane Kiffin, Deion Sanders. I think this is a good one.
Give me a second here.
Okay.
Can't just pull these things on me.
Well, I didn't just pull it on you. I'm
cutting Mike Norvell.
Wow, you're just going straight to the cut, Mike Norvell. Okay.
I'm starting. This is hard because these are 2 big personalities. I'm starting Lane Kiffin and I'm benching Deion Sanders.
I think that's the way I'm going as well. And I know a lot of people are going to go, Lane Kiffin, you're going to start Lane Kiffin?
Look, the dude knows talent.
Ole Miss, before Lane Kiffin showed up, Ole Miss had 3 10-win seasons in the last 50 years. And Lane Kiffin has had 10-win seasons in 3 of his first 4 years. Or actually 3 of his first 5 years at Ole Miss in 3 of the last 4 years. So you can say what you want about Lane Kiffin. And, there's sometimes it's I'm still kind of on the fence about him as well, but look at what he's done since he's been at Ole Miss. That is not a traditional place to win. And he has won a lot of football games down there after going off the beaten path and going to Florida Atlantic. So I'm going Lane Kiffin to start. Lane Kiffin to start. I am benching Coach Prime, and Joe says he thinks Deion's going to falter this season. He very well might. But what what has Mike Norvell done to
That's what I
prove that
mean.
he's a better coach in the
Won at
time that he's been
Memphis,
at Florida State? Yeah.
you
He
know?
fell completely on his face from one year to the next. Where at least Deion in his very first game beat the team that was the national runner-up the year before. And even though the improvement was incremental, they were still, even with a completely turned over roster and all the transfers and everything else, they were still a better football team in his first season than they were the previous year, and they got to a bowl game this past year with a quarterback that was only a 5th-round draft pick, if you want to look at it that way, and the Heisman Trophy winner. I guess you can throw that in there as well. But yeah, so I'm benching Deion. I'm not buying Mike Norvell. He's got a lot to prove, I think, this year.
I think he's got the, like, if you're looking at the three of them, who's got the most to prove this season?
It's him, by far.
Exactly. And
Not
so
even close.
I think what gets Lane Kiffin a bad rap is he was, first of all, his father, right? And so he was thrusted into, I think, a lot of action prematurely. Being an NFL head coach, being the head coach at USC, like, he was thrusted into some big time situations before I think he was ultimately ready, just on a maturity level. But ever since I just think that there's like this new coming of Lane Kiffin, kind of since those USC days, kind of regathered himself with Nick Saban down at Alabama, goes on to Florida Atlantic, is now really successful at Ole Miss. Like, he's got 3 or 4 double-digit win seasons in the SEC. Brian Kelly hasn't done that.
Yeah.
Mike Norvell hasn't done that at Florida State. Deion Sanders, yeah, he's potentially on the right track, but he's not winning a boatload of games in the SEC. And I just really there's 2 things I respect about Lane Kiffin. One, I think he's always going to be a pioneer of the offense. Like, he is going to be a guy who is just really good in terms of like designing offenses, And then 2, I think he's become someone kind of like Marcus Freeman, where he's prioritizing the relationships with his players, and that's leading to more success on the field. And so when you're talking about, if I had a son that was ready to go play football right now, that's who I'd want kind of leading my son, is 1, someone who knows a lot about the game, and 2, is taking the time to develop relationships with his players.
He had to grow up, and I think he knew he had to grow up. And I think, like the experience with Nick Saban, I think, even though that didn't, it's easy to remember that, like, that didn't end well, actually. That's the reason he ended up at Florida Atlantic, like when, Nick parted ways with him. But I think that it kind of helped kick Lane Kiffin into gear, and he's become a different coach in this kind of second half of his career, for sure.
Yeah.
And again, like, all you got to do is look at the results that he's had. He's been just outside the playoffs, basically. St. Louis Cardinals repeatedly played a clip of Matt Adams' 2014 NLDS home run off Clayton Kershaw during Kershaw's start in St. Louis this weekend. Kershaw said it's Bush League, but he wouldn't expect anything less from the Cardinals. So, Jess, was playing the clip fair or foul?
I think it's completely fair. And as much as I dislike the Cardinals, I believe this is top tier pettiness at the end of the day. And like, the reason
why 11 years ago.
Yeah, but who cares? Yeah, like, it clearly got up here.
Clayton Kershaw obviously cares. Yeah,
right. So clearly it got in his head, right?
Matt Adams ain't even in the big leagues anymore.
He's still thinking about it, and so, like, I don't know. I think that there's like some layers to having fun when you're doing these sort of things. And again, as much as I dislike the Cardinals, and they're a huge rival of the Cubs, I kind of have to tip my cap and say that was pretty. Like, when I saw that, I was laughing, and then when I saw that Kershaw actually responded, I was like, dude, this is exactly what they wanted from you. This is why they played the clip. But I mean, this just continues to reemphasize the point that, like, Kershaw's not a good postseason pitcher.
That's absolutely right. He's not. He was one of the greatest regular season pitchers, obviously, for a big stretch during that time. I just have to say, I didn't even realize Clayton Kershaw was still in the big leagues himself until I saw a clip of him over the weekend. It's like, oh, Clayton Kershaw is still around, huh? Okay. I'm a little bit more like, like, really, you're a big league organization. Is this what you have to resort to? But at the same time, I understand what you're saying. It's like, you're Clayton Kershaw. You're supposed to be a professional.
Right.
You should be a little bit more, you should have a little bit more mental fortitude, especially at this point in your career, than to worry about whatever they're playing up there on the scoreboard, a couple of home run highlights or whatever.
Just a Saturday day game, like
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
like we're gearing up for a playoff game or a wild card game. Like this is middle of the season afternoon game in St. Louis. I think that they very clearly knew that they were going to get a reaction, and that's what they got. So you kind of have to deem it a success, in my opinion.
Yeah. Matt comes in asking a recruiting question, and I've got to say, I don't know. I will send a text here real quick and see what I can find out. But I'll ask you the last question here in the meantime. You got small market Indiana Pacers facing the Oklahoma City Thunder, both small market teams in the NBA Finals. There's been a lot of talk about the TV ratings. And NBA Commissioner Adam Silver shot back by saying, if the Packers were playing the Steelers in the Super Bowl, everyone would be celebrating it. So, Jess, do you buy or sell that analogy?
I get what he's saying, but I have to sell the analogy because the Packers and the Steelers are two of the most prominent NFL organizations that they are. Yes, Green Bay and Wisconsin might be considered a smaller market, but the Packers themselves are like a longevity lifetime NFL team. The same with the Steelers. And Pittsburgh's no small city. It's probably comparable to Oklahoma City. And again, it's not New York or Chicago or LA by any means, but again, it's a blue blood NFL program with a long history of success. And so I think you could have used better teams there to hit your analogy home. And it probably, for the people who don't like the NBA, I'm sure they read that and were like, oh, this guy's an idiot. No wonder I don't like the NBA.
Well, I mean, one, comparing anything to the NFL is
not going to go well.
Fool's errand. Like, let's remember, we're talking about TV ratings, and the NFL in any given year has 90 of the top 100 rated TV programs on TV, and the NFL market or packages its TV deal differently. One, it starts with the fact that you have 17 regular season games versus 82 regular season games, and every game of an NFL schedule is potentially a national, like it's on network TV. It's potentially a national TV broadcast. Some of it gets regionalized, but the Steelers and the Packers, so like that's part of it. Then you look at the Steelers and the Packers. These are two of the most historic organizations in the NFL. They've combined to win like 8 Super Bowls altogether between them. Like, that's a big difference. So if you wanted to say the Arizona Cardinals and I don't know, the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Houston Texans, like if you wanted to use those as your examples, okay, maybe I can buy that analogy a little bit more. But like the Packers and Steelers, despite their like when they're good, they're two of the best ratings draws in all of sports. So it's a horrible analogy. It doesn't even, they don't belong in the same sentence. I'm sorry.
I feel bad for Vince. I didn't text him back yesterday, but he's ultimately got to be the jinx. Who shows up to a game and the Cubs strike out 12 times and don't score any runs?
Man. And he's got his tidy little scorecard. He's keeping score.
Easy day to keep score when you strike out 12 times.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate you being here tonight. As always, hit that like button before you leave, if you would. Do you have something to add before we leave?
to hit the like button.
Oh, just hit the like button. Do it. Big thumbs up. So do that, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Got a guest coming up for you tomorrow. I think you might like it. We will
I know
find
who
out.
it is. Ha ha ha.
Jesse's not telling. Talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.